Last June, I counted 11 ant mounds inside my vegetable garden. 11 mounds in a backyard I have been working for more than 20 years. They were in the raised beds, they were under the bean rows, and one big one sat right at the base of my best tomato plant. This June, Karen and I walked those same beds and found zero, not one mound. And the aphids that used to blanket my green beans every July never showed up either. I did not spray one drop of insecticide to get there. What did it was 1 tablespoon of borax, the same white powder that sits in a box in the laundry aisle for about $6, mixed into a bait at my kitchen counter in about 10 minutes. Now, that title sounds like a miracle cure, and I do not sell miracles. So today I am going to show you exactly what this bait wipes out, what it will not touch, and the exact measurements, because the measurements are the whole ball game. And stay with me to the end because there is one strange rule underneath all of it. If you make this mix stronger, it stops working completely. That is not superstition. It is one specific thing about how an ant colony feeds itself. And once you hear it, you will never mix this bait wrong again. I'm Steve Calloway. I've been growing food in the same Midwest backyard for more than 20 years, running side-by-side test beds and writing down what actually happened in every single one of them. My first garden was a jungle of green that gave me about a dozen tomatoes all summer, so I know what failure looks like up close. My wife Karen keeps the harvest log with me, and the summer the ants took over. That log dropped by close to 30 pounds. So let's talk about what those ants were really costing me, because it took me a full season to see it. An ant does not take big bites out of your tomatoes. The damage is sneakier than that. Ants in a vegetable garden are ranchers. They keep herds of aphids the way a farmer keeps dairy cows. Aphids drink the sap out of your bean leaves and your pepper stems, and they give off a sweet syrup called honeydew. The ants drink that syrup. So the ants carry aphids from plant to plant, park them on the tender new growth, and then stand guard over them. When a ladybug shows up to eat those aphids, which is exactly what a ladybug is for, the ants drive it off or kill it. Your free pest control never gets to do its job. Now, the first thing I tried was the spray aisle at the garden center. I killed thousands of ants on the surface, and 2 weeks later the mounds were busier than before. Here is why. The queen sits several feet underground, laying eggs all day long, and no spray on the surface ever touches her. Worse, that same spray killed my ladybugs and my lacewings along with everything else. The test beds made it plain. Spraying was costing me money and helping the aphids. The bait I'm going to show you goes after the queen herself, and hold on to that 1 tablespoon number, because whether this works or fails in your garden comes down to it. And I promise you the why is coming. Now, what I'm showing you today is one piece of a bigger system, and I wrote the whole thing down day by day in a book called Steve's 30-Day Maximum Yield Protocol. It is the exact 30-day system I follow in my own backyard to roughly double what every plant produces, written out for home gardeners who want a lot more food from the space they already have, no extra square footage, and no expensive equipment. It is 115 pages, and it walks you from soil preparation right through harvest. It covers the big 7 yield killers, my checklist for finding what is holding a garden back, plus feeding for fruit instead of foliage, the strategic pruning that feels wrong, but multiplies production, and companion and succession planning with the science behind why each one works. It works in raised beds, in-ground rows, and containers. It is $17 right now, marked down from $47, and one decent tomato plant pays that back by August. Now go ahead and grab your phone and open up your camera, the same one you use to take pictures. Point it at that square code on your screen and hold it steady for a second. A little link will pop up, give it a tap, and it will take you straight to the book. And if you're watching on your phone right now, the link is waiting for you right down below in the description. Take your time, there is no rush at all. I'll wait right here. All right, let's head to the kitchen counter and mix this bait, because the recipe is where people go wrong before they ever reach the garden. You need 3 things. The first is borax. That is the plain powdered borax sold in the laundry aisle of the grocery store, usually in a big cardboard box for $5 or $6. It is a natural mineral mined out of the ground, and 1 box will make this bait for years. Do not buy boric acid roach tablets. And do not buy anything with soap or fragrance mixed in. Plain borax powder. The second thing is white sugar. The regular sugar in your canister. The third is warm tap water. Now, here is the recipe, and I want you to write it down. 1 level tablespoon of borax. Let me say that again, because it matters more than anything else in this video. 1 tablespoon, leveled off with a butter knife, not heaping, and not a spoonful more. Then half a cup of white sugar. That is half a cup. A full 8 tablespoons of sugar against 1 of borax, and that lopsided ratio is on purpose. Then 1.5 cups of warm water. Pour the warm water into a mason jar first, add the sugar and stir until the water turns clear again. Then add that 1 level tablespoon of borax and stir until it disappears too. Take your time with the stirring, there is no rush, and the bait works better fully dissolved. When you are done, you have about a pint of syrup that smells like nothing and looks like sugar water. To an ant, it smells like the best meal of the year. Put a lid on the jar and write bait on it with a marker so nobody in the house mistakes it for simple syrup. That jar is your season's supply. Now let's get it into the garden safely because I do not want this syrup sitting in the open. Borax is safe enough that folks have washed clothes with it for 100 years, but you do not want the dog lapping up a puddle of sweet bait, and you do not want the grandkids finding it either. So we build bait stations, and this part costs nothing. I use the small plastic containers that lunch meat and sour cream come in. Take the container and poke 4 or 5 holes around the sides near the bottom, about the width of a pencil. Set a cotton ball inside or a folded piece of paper towel. Pour in a few tablespoons of the bait, enough to soak the cotton with a little standing extra. Snap the lid on. Now the ants can walk in through those pencil holes and drink all they want. The rain stays out, and nothing bigger than an ant can reach the syrup. That covered lid matters twice over because rain washing bait onto your soil is the one real risk here. And I will get to exactly why in a few minutes. Make 4 or 5 of these stations for an average backyard garden. As for placement, do not put them on the plants. Put them on the ground, right along the ant highways. Watch your beds for 10 minutes some morning with your coffee and you will see the trails, little moving lines of ants running between a mound and a bean row. Set a station directly on that trail or within a foot of a mound. The ants do the rest. And remember what I said about that strong mix rule. Where you place these matters far less than what is inside them, and we are getting closer to the why. So what should you expect once the stations are down? This is the part where half the folks who try borax bait give up. Right at the moment, it is working. On day 1 and day 2, the ant traffic around your stations will explode. You will lift that lid and see the cotton ball covered in ants, drinking shoulder to shoulder, and lines of them marching in and out of those pencil holes. Your instinct will be to stomp them. Do not do it. Every one of those ants is a delivery truck, and it is hauling poison down into that colony for you. Leave them alone and let them work. By around day 7 to day 10, the trails start thinning out. You will see fewer ants at the stations and less traffic on the highways. By the end of week 2, in my beds, the mounds went quiet. No workers coming and going, no fresh dirt kicked up. By week 3, I ran a hose test, and I know that sounds harsh, but I flooded the old mound entrances, and nothing boiled out. Nothing was home. All 11 mounds in my garden went down over the course of about a month with 2 rounds of bait. And that brings me to upkeep. The syrup ferments and dries out, so refill the stations with fresh bait once a week while the ants are active. A refill takes 2 minutes. Once the trails are gone, pull the stations, rinse them, and store them in the shed for next season. Now let me show you why the video title talks about all your pests when so far all we have killed is ants. Because this is where the harvest log gets interesting. The summer of the 11 mounds, my green bean rows were a disaster. The leaves curled, the new growth came in sticky and black with mold growing on the honeydew, and the aphid clusters were so thick on the stems they looked like grey felt. Karen's log shows about 15 pounds of beans that year, off rows that normally embarrass us with abundance. I never sprayed those aphids. I only ran the borax stations against the ants, and within about 3 weeks of the mounds going quiet, the ladybugs moved in, ladybug adults, and their larvae, which looked like tiny black and orange alligators, and green lacewing larvae right beside them. With no ant bodyguards driving them off, those insects did what they have done for millions of years and ate the herd. By late July, the bean rows were clean. The next season, with the ants gone from the start, the log shows just over 40 pounds of green beans from the same rows. Same space, same effort, completely different result. That is the real secret inside this method. You are not poisoning your way through every pest in the yard. You're firing the bodyguards, and then nature's own crew handles the aphids, the scale, and the mealybugs for free. The garden doesn't lie. It rewards the system, not the guesswork. But I told you at the start I would be straight about what this will not do. So here it is. Borax bait does nothing against Japanese beetles. It does nothing against tomato hornworms and nothing against squash bugs, because none of those pests share food the way ants do. And that sharing is the whole trick, which is exactly the mechanism I have been promising you since the hook. So when the title says forever, here is the honest version from my own records. A colony you kill is dead, queen and all, and that colony never comes back. New colonies can move in from the neighbour's yard next spring. When they do, the box in your laundry room is already paid for, the stations are in the shed, and the fix cost you pennies and an afternoon. That is as close to forever as anything gets in a backyard, and I will take it. One more warning, and this one is serious. Never dust dry borax over your beds, and never pour the bait onto your soil. Borax is boron, and boron is strange stuff for plants. In tiny traces, it is a nutrient they need. In anything more than a trace, it is plant poison. And a bed that takes a heavy dose of borax can refuse to grow much of anything for a full season or more. I proved that the hard way in a corner test bed years ago, and the beans I planted there came up yellow and stunted all summer. The bait belongs inside a covered station, off the soil, full stop. Respect that one rule and this method is as gentle a fix as exists in gardening. And now the part I promised you, the strange rule that decides everything. Why does 1 level tablespoon of borax kill an entire colony several feet underground, while 2 or 3 tablespoons, which sounds stronger and better, fails completely? It comes down to how an ant colony eats. A worker ant that finds food does not just feed herself. She fills up a second stomach, a kind of built-in lunch pail scientists call the social stomach, and she carries that load home. Down in the nest, she passes it mouth to mouth, ant to ant, to the workers who never leave, to the larvae in the nursery, and eventually to the queen herself. One forager can end up feeding dozens of nestmates from a single trip. Borax at 1 tablespoon strength is a slow poison. A worker that drinks it stays alive and working for another 2 or 3 days, and in those days she makes trip after trip, hauling sweet poison down the hole and sharing it through the whole family, all the way to the queen. The queen dies, the brood dies, and the colony is finished. Now make that mix strong, and everything falls apart. The scouts die within hours, some of them right at the station, some on the trail home with a full lunch pail that never gets delivered. Ants pay close attention to their dead. When bodies pile up around a food source, the colony marks it as dangerous and stops visiting entirely. So the strong mix kills a few dozen workers out of a colony of thousands. The queen never tastes a drop, and the gardener decides borax is junk. I tested this myself. 1 tablespoon stations against 3 tablespoon stations on mounds at opposite ends of the same yard. The weak stations erased their mounds in 2 weeks. The strong stations were abandoned in 3 days, and those mounds were still thriving in August. The bait has to be weak enough to be carried and strong enough to kill, and 1 level tablespoon in half a cup of sugar and a cup and a half of water is the balance point my test beds settled on. And that is exactly the kind of thing the whole protocol is built on. Tested, cheap, and written out day by day, so you can just follow along. Steve's 30-day maximum yield protocol is the system that took this backyard from a dozen sad tomatoes to more food than Karen and I can give away. And every method in it earned its page the same way this bait did, in side-by-side beds with the results written down. 30 days, soil preparation through harvest, $17 instead of $47, and the first fix you find with the Big 7 yield killers will pay for the book on its own. Now go ahead and grab your phone and open up your camera, the same one you use to take pictures. Point it at that square code on your screen and hold it steady for a second. A little link will pop up, give it a tap, and it will take you straight to the book. And if you're watching on your phone right now, the link is waiting for you right down below in the description. Take your time. There is no rush at all. I'll wait right here. So, once more, 1 level tablespoon of borax, half a cup of white sugar, 1.5 cups of warm water, kept weak on purpose so the workers live long enough to carry it all the way down to the queen. If you run this test in your own beds, come back and tell me the before and after. I read every single one, and next time I'm going to show you why every July I cut nearly half the leaves off my tomato plants, and why the plants I cut the hardest hand me the most fruit by September. It feels dead wrong the first time you do it, and the harvest log says otherwise. Get out there and get your hands dirty, and I'll see you in the garden.